ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैर्तुष्टुवांसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति नः इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नो तार्क्ष्यो स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु ॐ शान्तिः 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 यो अन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाच इमां प्रक्षुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्नाम् अन्यांष्टहस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम् लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथा भूतं विष्णुतत्त्वनिर्णयम् देवं नारायणं नत्वा सर्वदोषविवर्जितं परिपूर्णं गुरुंष्टान् गीतार्थं वक्ष्यामि लेशतः. So, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone. So, welcome to Gita Chintana, Chapter 2, Sankhya Yoga, led by Anand ji. So, over to you, Anand.
Harihi Om Sri Krishnaya Namaha. Thank you, Madhuji, and my namaskars to all the elders and all the participants of this session. We had an excellent start to Bhagavad Gita Chintana last time with the first chapter led by Venkatesh Mutalik ji, GV ji, Deval ji, and Suresh ji. Hopefully, we can keep up the momentum and start with the second chapter today, which is Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga, as you know, is one of the biggest chapters in Bhagavad Gita, only next to the 18th chapter. Because it has 72 verses, we plan to cover this in 2 sessions. Session 1 will be, like today, it will be 1 to 38 verses. Session B will be 39 to 72 verses. We are hopeful that we can manage these 72 verses in the 2 sessions. But let me tell you, it's such an important topic, Sankhya Yoga, like Madhuji puts it. It's the fundamental, it's the foundation to understand the philosophy in Bhagavad Gita and practice the Karma Yoga. So we will have low threshold if it drags on to make another session, 3rd session, but we'll see how it goes. So we have a good lineup of speakers. We have Suresh ji, who will do a quick recap on the chapter 1 and then go through the verses 1 to 9. And then we have our own Madhuji, who will start with the Sankhya, covering the verses 11 to 17. And I'll try and keep up this same topic between the verses 18 to 30. Then we will have Neetaji to cover Dharma of Kshatriya, which are the verses 31 to 38. And after this, I'll come back again just to reflect on what we have covered so far, maybe summarize the whole session and give what's the verdict of Lord Krishna. Maybe I'll introduce the second sessions and we'll have a brief Q&A followed by the closing prayer. Next slide, please. Sankhya Yoga. It's probably a little misunderstanding for a lot of people thinking that Sankhya Yoga is one terminology. It's not. Sankhya is different. Yoga is different. Sankhya comes from the Sanskrit word samyak, meaning perfect, Khyati, meaning knowledge. Sankhya means the philosophy of the right knowledge, particularly the knowledge of God. So it's just the knowledge, it's theoretical. Sankhya is usually confused with Sankhya. Sankhya means numerology. So numerology, as you all know, will never have errors. It's perfect. Numerology is always perfect. So possibly it's possible that a bit of the meaning comes to Sankhya, which means the perfect knowledge of the Lord. Yoga yoga is the means to attain this knowledge. It is termed as yoga. Yoga is something practical, Sankhya is something theory. Once again, Sankhya in Gita does not refer to Sankhya system of Kapila, which I'm sure most of you are aware of. Sankhya in Gita is different. In fact, in chapter 3, Krishna himself defines Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, Karma Yogena Yoginam. So we will be hearing a lot more there, but the Sankhya of Gita is a little different. Just next click, please. So the Sankhya in Gita involves knowing the soul as eternal, how the soul functions. Is the soul independent in its functioning, or is it guided by the God? If it is guided by the God, what is the nature of the God who guides? What is the relation between the God and the individual soul? What is the nature of the world in which the soul functions? How the soul is regulated by the body? This is the Sankhya in Gita, which we're going to possibly explore today. Once again, yoga, there's a misunderstanding that it is Patanjali's yoga. No, it's different, and we will come to it in the second session. But before we go on to the Sankhya knowledge, our friend Arjuna still has some anxieties, some questions, some doubts, despite what all he has said in the previous chapter 1. So I will pass on to Sureshji to have a quick recap and carry on with the verses 1 to 9. Over to you, Sureshji.
Thanks, Anandji. So as Anandji and Madhuji were just alluding to, a very important chapter, a foundational chapter. And before we delve into Krishna telling us about Sankhya, just thought it will be good to recap, catch up a little bit of what we discussed towards the end of last session, and then round it off with further questions Arjuna has in this chapter. Just to remind ourselves, here is our protagonist who's brimming with confidence and has told his charioteer, Senayor Rubhayor Madhye Ratham Sthapaya Mechyuta. Park my cart in the middle of the two armies, is what Arjuna has instructed his charioteer. And why? I just want to see who these bloodthirsty hounds are who are, fighting against me with this stupid fellow Duryodhana. That seems to be the arrogance, the confidence that Arjuna has coming into the battlefield. And in fact, the stage is such that the battle has begun in some quarters here and there. And then Krishna senses something's not right here. And there is an Anika of army here. I mean, there are thousands of people around, but Krishna parks the chariot just in front of Bhishma and Drona, and then tells Arjuna, see, my dear friend, Mahikshitam, and this is what he wanted me to show you. Do see. And here's the situation. When suddenly Arjuna sees Bhishma, Drona, his own people, so he gets into a state of, we discussed it very well with Devalji last time, a state of anxiety. So maybe the fear component, the flight component is overpowering the fight component in Arjuna's mind. And what does he see? He says, Pitru, Nata Pitamahan, Acharyan, Matulan, Bhratran, Pautran, Putran. He's just seeing all his relatives. He is seeing his own people. And then he's filled with compassion. And then he comes to a stage where the bow in the Gandiva in his hand is trembling. He can't hold the bow straight. He feels his skin is burning. So he gets into this state of extreme anxiety. As we move to the next slide, Madhuji. So in this situation, and as maybe Daniel Kahneman would put it, the fast thinking component, the instinctive of self-protection overpowers rational thinking. And perhaps that's what's brilliantly illustrated here when Arjuna all of a sudden remembers, Nimittani cha pashyami. He said, you know, the bad omens, now I know why we saw all of those bad omens. And whatever we are going to do is not going to do any good to us. And why? And the first thing that Arjuna sees is Hatva Swajanam. I'm going to kill my own people. And this, how on earth killing my own relatives, my own teachers is ever going to do any good to me? That seems to be the fundamental question. But Arjuna knows pretty well there is an urge not to fight, but he can't just walk away. He needs to justify it, both to himself and to Krishna there, perhaps. And then the question that he tries to delve in is, what for and whom for is this fight? And therefore he says, Kimno Rajyena Govind. What do we usually get out of the war? I mean, I get kingdom to rule. And why do I want this? When Esha Amartik, I mean, my own people are going to die. My relatives, the people that I want to live with, share with my joys and sorrows, if all of them are going to die, what's the point of fighting this war and winning this kingdom? So that seems to be, and it's a very interesting thing that Kunti actually says that, of what use is, fortune acquired in a strange land when there is nobody around you? That seems to be the sense which Arjuna is trying to justify to himself. So he's saying, who am I fighting for? And what would be the cost? I mean, for what would I fight these people? If that's the question that comes into Arjuna's mind, on the next bullet, we'll see that forget these kingdoms, Krishna. Even if you give me the authority over the three worlds, no way am I going to be fighting my own relatives. So that's one line of thought that's coming into Arjuna's mind. But suddenly he fleets. I mean, and somewhere in his mind, it's very evident that it's not a clean line of thinking. So he suddenly says, I need perhaps more justification not to fight. So let's just look at the what if of it. Now, what if Krishna is going to tell me that, guys, these are all, do you know what you're talking, Arjuna? These are all terrorists here standing in front of you. So he says, I'm aware, Krishna. But, these are terrorists. I mean, these are people who are Atatayins. They are murderous reprobates. Now, why the hell should I fight with them and kill them? And I would be a sinner if I kill these kinds of people. Oh, may not be true. But you know what? Because I'm allowed in Arthashastra to actually kill, but Dharma Shastra tells me don't kill my neighbors. These are all my neighbors and relatives. So there seems to be some confusion even within that thought in Arjuna's mind. And then he tries to justify, and why have these people become Atatayins? Maybe it is desire which is driving them to do that. Basically, perhaps they are not that bad. Maybe they deserve some compassion from me. That's another line of thought that Arjuna tries to bring in. And then further, he says, so what of it? Now, assuming all of this is true and we fight the war, what's going to happen? So Arjuna says, Kulakshaya Krutam. I mean, we're going to destroy the entire clan. If we destroy the entire clan, then it's going to be adharma. I mean, the dharma is going to be lost. And then he's conscious. He says, of the two sins, if I don't fight, well, I'm going to commit the sin of a Kshatriya not fighting. But if I do fight and kill the entire clan, perhaps I'm going to create even a more graver sin. So why should I not pick the lesser sin in this kind of a situation? Not satisfied with this, he even further goes on to try and justify that the war, our Purvajas, our great-great-grandfathers, even they will be troubled because there's nobody to do the oppositions and the duties that one is supposed to do here. They will also suffer. And therefore, Krishna, had I not asked you to come and park the chariot here in front, the middle of the two armies, aho bata mahat papam, what kind of sin we would have created. So he says, and that's how he tries to justify for himself from different lines of thoughts. So here is a situation wherein, and as we saw in the end of the first chapter, having said that, having perhaps in his own mind thought that he had put up a rational argument with Krishna, he says, Rathopas, I mean, he just drops down his arms and he sits in the middle of the chariot. And that's the situation which leads us into chapter 2. Here's our protagonist. The war is about to start. He's found some arguments. he is sitting in the middle of the chariot, perhaps thinking, you know what, I have given some good arguments to Krishna. Let's see what he says. How is he going to get me out of this situation? So that's the kind of sense perhaps I am imagining Arjuna perhaps has, having put up these kinds of arguments. And that's when chapter 2 begins. And Sanjaya says, Tam tatha krupaya vishta ashru purna. So Arjuna's situation is that it's not that he's very clear and he's very confident of what he has said. There's a drop of tear in his eye. And then he is sitting, I mean, tatha, I understood while reading, actually signifies that he's sitting in a wrong place, which is just indicative that he somehow, something in his mind is telling him, I'm not going to fight. And that's why he wants to convey what he wants to convey to Krishna. But here is Krishna on the other hand. Ideally, after having put up these kinds of arguments, one would have picked up and tried to tell Arjuna that your thinking is not right. But Krishna, on the other hand, totally disregards everything that Arjuna has brought in to try and justify his stance. Rather, he starts by saying, what's happening, Arjuna? Where on earth did these kinds of thoughts come to you? And very intelligently there, as Badarang, he uses the term Arjuna. Arjuna is a name that our protagonist is pretty proud of. And actually, he in Virata Parva, he explains to Prince Uttara, you know why? Why am I called Arjuna? I am blemishless. And that's the reason I'm called Arjuna. And then you can't find anybody else like me in any part of this earth. And then the word Vishame here is actually denoting a mismatch there. So this Arjuna is now not Arjuna anymore. There is some dirt coming on this Arjuna is what perhaps Krishna is trying to say. And then he's wondering, do you even realize what you are saying, Arjuna? I mean, and whatever you are saying, not only is it going to be a Swargam, it's not going to let you into Swarga if you do want, according to what you are saying. Not only is it going to be bring you disrepute, it is going to be Anarya Justam. And Anarya Justam, I understand, is a pretty strong censure that comes in Mahabharata many a times. So he's actually censuring Arjuna here. But it is Krishna. He doesn't stop there. He goes even a step further and calls him a coward. He says, Klaibyammas magam of Partha, take out this cowardice. And as Bananji puts it, had it been anybody else apart from Krishna who would have dared to call Arjuna an impotent or a coward, it would have been a totally different story. That's Arjuna that you are talking to. But it is Krishna who tells him, get out of your cowardice. And then he calls him Partha here, indicating that he is the son of Kunti. Just also to remind him that a day before the war, Kunti had actually sent a message to Arjuna to say that, Arjuna, for you, see, seeking for alms, going begging is not meant for you. If you do agriculture, that is unbecoming of you. The only thing you need to do is, as a Kshatriya, defend the people who are with you and fight the war. And that's what Krishna seems to be reminding Arjuna here when he uses the word Partha. And he's just telling him, Kshudram Hrudaya Daurbalyam, Tyaktva Uttishta Parantapa. Parantapa, you are Parantapa. You are the one who inflicts pain on enemies. Get up and fight. So that's the rebuke that Krishna gives to the entire story that Arjuna has constructed in chapter 1. As we move to the next slide, Arjuna is an intelligent person. He gets the sense of where Krishna is going, and perhaps his pride is hurt. So, but there is this situation in his mind, and mind in such circumstances, at least most of us perhaps have experienced, we find very innovative ways of finding many different excuses to somehow try and defend the situation we are in. And that Arjuna suddenly changes his line of thought. And then he says, forget about Dharmo Nashtam, clan being discussed. Forget everything that I had said. And Krishna, don't think that I am a coward. please, I have the kind, I would fight. But you know what? You are asking me to fight Bhishma and Drona, and these are people, who are gurus. I mean, who's taught me, and these are people that I respect. How can I fight them? Again, there is conflict in Arjuna's mind. It's still not a very clear statement, because in the very next verse, while he's saying that, if I kill my guru, it's not going to be good for me, but then he calls them as arthakamis. So he knows, I mean, he says he has to somehow defend that. I mean, we know Drona, Brahmin, just, to repay the debt of Duryodhana is fighting along with Duryodhana, though he knows that it is wrong. Bhishma in his own heart knows, and actually, I mean, it's very interesting that in Mahabharata, every day he would in the morning pray to God, saying that may the Pandavas win, and then he would come and fight against them with full rigor, doing no injustice to the role that he was supposed to do as a person fighting for the Kauravas. So this is, but he's still fighting, knowing that he should not be. He's still fighting with Duryodhana. So these are people, they are arthakamis. They still have attachments, and it's a very interesting argument that Arjuna puts in there. Don't you think we should just let them live and then have the taste of these attachments and let them enjoy it till satiety? So there's still conflict in Arjuna's mind, and then it becomes to such an extent that then he starts questioning, what should his role in war be? Should I fight to win, or should I fight to lose? What's better for me? Yadva jayema, yadivana jayeyu. I don't know. I mean, so that's the extent to which Arjuna's mind is torn, and he reaches a point of inflection where then he says, no, you know what, I'm not getting anywhere. I've tried to argue in many different ways. I've tried this line, I've tried that. Somehow or other, somewhere deep in my mind, something is telling me that I'm conflicted. And then there's the surrender to the Lord. And he just say this. So the word karpanya is used. So the attachment is just to emphasize on the strength, on the extent of attachment that Arjuna is experiencing at this point of time. And then he does say that his mind is perplexed by moral dilemmas. And then he says, take me as your disciple and command me. So that's how Arjuna, from brimming with ego, comes down to being a disciple and seeks further direction from Krishna. I think it's the right time just to pause a little bit and just reflect on what Arjuna has had to say. So he started with bringing his own individuality. And when you are asking questions of dharma and adharma, my own individual existence perhaps is not something that matters. It's the greater good. It's the larger perspective that needs to be taken into consideration. And Arjuna is not fighting just for the sake of it. He is not fighting to ensure that he'll get the pleasures and he'll have some people to enjoy after winning the war. That's not the purpose as to why Arjuna has come down to fight here. And he keeps telling Swajana. Swajana is not blood relationships in this context here. It is, there's no middle path here. Are you with dharma or are you with adharma? And what you do perhaps defines who is with you and who is not with you. And just to make sure that war is not new to Arjuna. Just at the command of his teacher, as soon as the graduation was done, he went and he fought against Drupada and brought him in front of. So he's fought enough wars. And it's also very clear in Adi Parva that he believes that this world is upheld by laws of pains and penalties. It's a very interesting statement that comes there, that where Arjuna says, I cannot see any life without doing any harm. So doing, inflicting pain or nothing of this is new to me. And therefore, how do we understand Arjuna comes a question. And if you look at different references, you will get different versions of it. There is a version which says that he is Paramakarunika. He is one, who is with exalted tenderness. Well, these interpretations are there, and we will perhaps take what suits best to our own understanding and how we would like to take it. There is a description that he's a true Vairagyi, Prajnavada. Perhaps we'll touch upon it a little later in this session. There is a line of thought which describes Arjuna as an ignorant person full of mundane illusions. And there, of course, we described last time, and this again we will touch upon later in today's session, where he's actually an Aproksha Jnani whose intellect is partly dimmed by the environment. All said and done, though Arjuna is actually asking a question which is, torn in turmoil, it's a very personal question to him, but easily he does bring up a question that is relevant to the entire human life and action, and that's the teaching that we will see. So just summing up this part on the next slide, to quickly reflect, starting from near arrogance, faced with a very tricky situation, Arjuna brought about fondness for kith and kin. He brought about aversion for bloodshed. He even talked of penalties after life. He portrayed a very gloomy future, brought in his ancestors. He is pretty unsure. He's torn in his own mind, and he's finding himself in a situation where he's extremely uncomfortable. The Lord threw a couple of darts in response to his justification. Well, he felt the puncture. He changed his line of thought. He tried to still defend, and to the extent that he could not see the difference between victory and defeat, and surrendered to the disciple, surrendered to be a disciple to the great teacher. But this is Arjuna, who is still with attachment. Ideally, having surrendered, one would have just kept on and said, now I have surrendered, please tell me, Krishna, what I should do next. But on the next slide, as we will see, Arjuna says, before you tell me anything, if you do convince me to fight in the end, and whenever it is, just remember that the amount of grief that I will suffer because I am killing my own people, there is no way that can be washed out. Maybe I'll win the war. Maybe I'll get the kingdom. But you know what? You're going to push me into a state of perpetual grief. He seems to be saying that. And then, having said all of this, the Parantapa, the person who, inflicts pain to enemies, is telling to Hrishikesha, the controller of senses, and he says as if, now I have made up my mind, Nayotsaiti Govindam, I am not going to fight. And then he just keeps quiet. Now, as a teacher, now here is a student who's blabbering for so much, surrenders himself as a disciple, and then tells him, I'm not going to fight. Forget him. Asks for advice, but then gives his own statement and saying that I am not going to fight. As a coach, as a teacher, how does the Lord respond and take this forward is what Anandji will help us take us forward. Anandji, over to you, please.
Thank you, Sureshji. So following what Suresh just said, Lord smiles. This is a very, very important verse for me. Prahasaniva Bharat. Volumes have been written on this smile. I just thought I'll pick up a couple of things and let you all know. Krishna's smile was a gentle smile. It was not a smile of outright ridicule, which would have provoked Arjuna. In fact, it would have made Arjuna non-receptive to what Lord is going to say next. Krishna also did not take any offense at the attitude of Arjuna, because Arjuna said so many things which were very provoking. So Krishna didn't start a tirade of censure there. Instead, his smile was a calculated one, as if to say, how mistaken are you, Arjuna? I do not blame you, but your attitude is utterly wrong and indefensible. Although there was some ridicule, some contempt, for the reasoning and conclusion of Arjuna. So others have quoted quite a few things as to why Krishna smiled. Maybe I'll quickly go through that. As you all know, Arjuna is avatar of the Lord. He is Lord of Lords, Devendra. But in verse 18, he says, even if he is given the rulership over the gods, he doesn't want to fight. Krishna is saying, look, this man is already Devendra, he's Lord of Lords, he's saying that. And when in verse 7, he surrenders himself and says, my mind is confused. Please guide me, I'm your student. So it has been unilateral surrender. But very much in verse 9, he says, Nayotse iti Govindam, I will not fight. So Krishna is thinking, such a wise man, he's contradicting himself. And the final point I put there is, Arjuna has called Krishna Hrishikesha several times. Hrishikesha means the controller of senses. He would have easily realized that and said, my mind is confused. Please control my mind. On one hand, he says Hrishikesha. The other hand, he starts giving all the excuses. So, because I thought that was a nice transition slide here. We'll move on to the next slide. We come back to Sankhya. So in the last session, Devalji kindly gave us a lot of information about how Arjuna was going through a lot of anxieties, fear, panic, conflicts in mind. He was sweating, his Gandiva was falling down. So what is all this due to? Next click, please. All this is due to because Arjuna is worried about the adverse outcomes. He's thinking about, I'll be killing my kith and kin, my teachers, my brothers, loss of lives. He's thinking a lot. So what is the root cause of these symptomatology and these adverse outcomes? Why does one think like that? Next click, please. It's because of the ignorance. In the last session, Venkatesh Mitalikji said a lot about Tirodhana. Tirodhana is clouding of the sensorium. Arjuna had a clouding of the sensorium here. He did not know the outcome of this war, the results of this war. So all these symptoms are bothering him. In order to get rid of this ignorance, Krishna has to impart him some knowledge. Next click, please. And that's the Sankhya knowledge he's going to impart. Just to give you an analogy of cricket. Cricket's the sport of cricket. If you are watching a live match, let's say you're watching Australia, India playing live, you are sitting on the sofa, sitting on maybe on your toes, biting your nails, you are anxious, a lot of uncertainties, a lot of fear is going on in your minds. Why? Because of the adverse outcomes. You are thinking that what if India loses the match? What if Virat Kohli goes out for a duck? What if India closes within 100? Why do you have these? Because you have the fear of, because you are ignorant about the result of the match. Now change the scenario. Think that you are watching the highlights of the cricket match. During watching highlights, you know the result. So there is no ignorance. So understandably, there's no fear. There's no fear of adverse outcomes because you already have the knowledge. This is an analogy. So in order to get rid of that Tirodhana of Arjuna, Lord Krishna imparts Sankhya knowledge to him. I request Madhuji to impart the same knowledge to us. Over to you, Madhuji.
So thank you very much, Anand. Wonderful. So fear, panic, conflict of mind, grief. We all go through this on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. If anybody in this audience is going to tell me that they don't have fear, panic, conflict of mind, or grief, I don't believe you. So we all go through this. And the same thing, Arjuna had to go through this in this scenario of the battlefield. How does Krishna deal with this problem? Krishna is a great psychotherapist, right? We have all been told the first psychiatrist in the world was Krishna. He is the one who delivered this masterly psychotherapy. And how is Krishna going to be dealing with this, what looks like a very sound argument from Arjuna? So he immediately says, Ashochan anvasochastvam prajnavadamshta bhashase gatasoon agatasoonscha na anusochanti panditaha. So that is the very first verse of philosophy that comes in Sankhya Yoga. Ashochan anvasochastvam. You're grieving for something that should not be grieved for, Arjuna. That is what he said in the very first verse. So the key points there to think about is Arjuna's grief and reasoning justified? From Arjuna's perspective, it feels like he was justified, and he gave a list of all the logic that Suresh ji took us through in this session and in the previous session. Is this Arjuna's grief reasoning or justified or not? That's a very, very first question. And here, Krishna has very categorically, he has said, and also in the second verse, Klaibyam, he told him off very, very, in the very first portion of Sankhya, he tells him off. That is the only verse in Gita where Krishna actually tells off Arjuna. But then he comes back to his compassionate mode, and he says, you shouldn't be grieving for things that are not worth grieving for. So is Arjuna's grief reasoning or justified? From Krishna's perspective, 100% not. Okay. And why do I say that? Ashochan anvasochastvam prajna vadamshta bhashase. Okay, so that's a very, very important word. So, we could speak hours talking about these verses, but I just want to pick up a couple of verses. I want to take Prajnavadam. Okay, Prajnavadam. There are lots of things that have been written about Prajnavadam, as Anandji and others, Sureshji very briefly alluded to. Some folks think Arjuna spoke very wisely. Arjuna was very compassionate, and he had all the knowledge, and he spoke this his argument, his articulation was fantastic. No. Krishna started off saying, Ashochan anyasochastvam prajnavadamshta bhashase. And what is that etymology of prajnavadan there? And again, we need to go deep into the Gita Upanishad to understand it. What is prajnavadan? Prajnavadan does not mean he spoke wisely. Why do I say that? Because in verse 2:7, Arjuna himself has said, Dharma sammuda chetaha. My mind is completely bewildered and I am confused. And if you look at the internal evidence in chapter 11 and chapter 18, Arjuna himself has said, Moho I am deluded. And then in 18th chapter, he says, after you have taught me everything, Nashto mohaha, gata sandehaha. So that is what he has said in the Gita, clearly implying he himself knew that he was somehow deluded. And yet there are some folks who think that Arjuna spoke very wisely. So if you take the internal evidence, he certainly did not speak wisely. So then what is the meaning of Prajnavada? Okay, so the etymology of Prajnavada is two. Prajnaya utta vadaha. Saying whatever comes to one's mind without sound reasoning. That is called Prajnavada. When you split that way. Prajnaya uttaha vadaha. Prajna means what? Mind. What are the components of the mind? We know mind component, we know manas, buddhi, ahankara. Buddhi, manas, buddhi. Whatever coming to your mind, you're saying. And some of us do that without sound reasoning. Although we may think that we got sound reasoning, Arjuna was not doing that. And hence Krishna tells him, you're talking like a Prajnavada. Okay. What is the other etymology of Prajnavada? Prajnanam avadaha. So that sandhi there can be broken that way. Prajnanam avadaha. Saying that which is not wise. Okay. So we have to take this verse in context and understand what is it that Krishna is telling. Krishna is telling Arjuna, you spoke very wisely, mate. Now I'll give you extra bit of wisdom to you. No, he said you did not speak wisely. Okay. So the cha, and I want to focus quite a few on this chakara in these verses. If you take the chakara, in this verse there are chakara twice. Ashochan anvasochastvam prajna vadam cha bhashase gatasun agatasun cha na anusochanti panditaha. So there are two chas there, and the two chas there have different meanings. They have different philosophical context. So what is the prakarana here? What is the context? The context here is Krishna tells him, Arjuna, you grieved wrongly. The chakara there is and you spoke unwisely. So when he says asochan anvasochastvam prajnavadamshta bhashase gatasun agatasunshta na anusochanti panditaha. So Arjuna's grief is unworthy and condemnable reasoning. Why is the question? And Krishna takes up in the second line. Gatasun agatasun cha na anusochanti panditaha. Gatasun means those that are gone. Okay, but mind you, the war has not happened yet. The soldiers have not died yet. But Krishna is saying the ones that are going to die. So from that we gather this is all these have been decided already. Krishna is saying those who are going, gata soon, those who are about to die. Okay? And he takes an example here. Gata soonsta na anusochanti panditaha. Their chakara means like or just as. Agata soons means the ones that are living. Just as we all do not grieve for the living, similarly, you should not grieve for the dead or the dying. So that is the meaning of that verse. Just as we all do not grieve for the living, similarly, we should not grieve for the dying. And who thinks like that? Panditahas thinks like that. Again, another internal evidence to show that Krishna is telling Arjuna, you are not thinking properly. You are not a Pandita because you are not thinking like this. And you are a Pragnavadam, Shabasha say. Okay. So he says the Panditas do not grieve for the living and the Panditas do not grieve for the dead or the dying. Why? Why do the wise who know the Shastras do not grieve for the living or the dead? This is the key question. And as we have done this in so many of these occasions, we should always put ourselves into somebody else's shoes and try and walk the talk, as it were, or talk the walk. So whichever way you want to put it. Okay, so here is Arjuna, who's got fear, he's got panic, he's got grief, he's got conflicts, and he's really stuck in a situation where he does not know how to come out of this, what is quite a complicated situation. And we are all in these types of situations in our lives, day in and day out, be it personal, professional, or otherwise. We are in the situation of various degrees. Okay? So the question that Arjuna is posing, and Krishna actually predicts what are all the ideas, what are all the things that are running through Arjuna's mind. So Krishna is taking up these three arguments in the coming verses, and he's saying, what could be the possible reasons for Arjuna's grief? And in his shoes, we should be thinking, what are all the possible reasons for our griefs in our lives? It could be a loved one who is not well, or it could be somebody else who's dying. It could be whatever, yeah, that grief that we have. So the situation that Arjuna is, we take up three arguments here. So this forms the basic foundation of Vedic Dharma, Vedic philosophy, Sanatana Dharma, whatever you want to call it. What could be the possible reasons for Arjuna's grief? Is it the loss of souls of Bhishma and others? Is it the loss of the bodies of Bhishma and others? Or is there no soul beyond the body? When the body decays, the soul also decays, and these guys go off when the battle is done, and you cannot have that contact with them. Is that the reason why Arjuna is grieving? So these are all the three arguments that Krishna takes up, and then comes forth with this one of the most famous verse of Gita. Natve vaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipaha nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayam atahat param. Okay. So we don't have time to go through the grand Vedic philosophy that Arjuna is giving Arjuna here. The Krishna is giving Arjuna here. But the question is, could it be that the grief of Arjuna is because the soul of Bhishma is lost in this battle? Okay, and Krishna takes that argument first, and he gives forth one of the fundamental axiomatic truths of Vedic philosophy. And what is that? Verily never was I not, nor you, nor these men, verily shall any of us cease to be hereafter. So when you look at the language there, natvam, there's so many double negatives here. This whole line is full of double negatives. Okay. So the double negatives in Vedic philosophy is always given to prove a thesis emphatically. If you want to stress something, you do a double negative. And even in English language, we do that. But in Sanskrit, it's very much fine-tuned that you use a double negatives to prove the positive affirmatively, to stress that fact. And what is he saying? He's saying, we are eternal, mate. Okay, so, and how is that language there that is coming? And again, you need to see the first line. He says, Natve vaham jatunasam. Just as I am eternal. That is what he's saying the first. Just as I am eternal, you as a soul is eternal. And what is he doing? He's showing his hands around and saying, so are these souls who are ready to fight in front of you. Okay. I am, just as I am eternal, you are eternal, and all these souls, Janadipaha. So that is an important verse. Janadipaha, talking about plurality and multiplicity of souls out there on the battlefield, ready to fight. Okay, so in this verse, eternality of Paramatma and eternality of souls, eternality of Arjuna as a soul, and eternality of all those plurality of souls is established categorically, and volumes of work has been written on this. Okay, about the oneness of God and multiplicities of souls is categorically established in this verse, just by looking at the language of what Badarayana, Vedavyasa, Krishna Dvaipayana has actually used in Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Yet some folks, to bring in their own hypothesis, they say there is only one soul. But when Krishna said Janadipaha, what he meant was multiplicities of bodies out there. There is only one soul, but there are multiplicities of bodies. Is one school of philosophy that reads this verse, 100% not. Watch the language. If the oneness of soul and Brahman is taught, there is no need to start with a clear statement of plurality. You could have said, mate, we are all one. This is all just body. Just don't forget this. You and me are the same. Let's just go and fight. You don't have to go around and touch your nose behind your head. You can directly touch your nose. Yeah. So we need to watch these languages. I am eternal. You are eternal. Okay. So one of the ideas of Max Muller caught my attention. Our immortality as souls can be inferred from our irrepressible desire for existence, implanted in every being. We all want to live. Nobody wants to die. There are only some mentally unwell people who want to die, but most of us want to live. Why? Because it is the inherent nature of the souls that they live forever. Why do we always crave for happiness? Because it is the inherent nature of the soul that it is Ananda, it is Swarupananda, and that is why it craves for bliss. Why do we always seek knowledge? We want to know something. Why? Because it is the inherent nature of the soul that it is chit, it is knowledge. So these are all the grand ideas that we can infer from our own daily, existence. So this is very clear from this verse that Krishna has taken himself as an example, and he establishes the eternality of souls. Okay. Also, Krishna, as you know, Gita is a summary of the Upanishads, right? And Krishna takes up the Upanishads in every verse and illustrates and establishes a philosophy. In Katha Upanishad, we have done this verse. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman tam atmastam ye anupashyanti dhiraha tesham shantihi shashvatihi na itaresham. And he said, Nityo Nityanam, that Yama has said to Nachiketa, that Paramatma is Nityo Nityanam. So there is a doubt. What is this eternals of the eternals? Does that mean Jiva is eternal and the God is eternals of the eternals? Means there is some grade of eternality there, and there is some differences in the eternality between the soul and the eternality of the Jivas? No, in this very first verse of philosophy, Krishna says, my eternality is the same as your eternality. When it comes to time, when you look at in point of time, my eternality is the same as yours. You are different from me. You are infinite. I am one, but our eternalities is the same. But your eternality is eternally dependent on me, number one. So there is some subtle differences. But more importantly, and this is why this is beautiful, this verse, Krishna said, Nat tu eva aham. He puts the word tu. The tu there is highly significant. The tu there signifies that the body of Krishna is eternal, and him and his body are the same. But you and me and Arjuna, when we are in this samsara, we have a body that is different from the soul. The body perishes, the soul does not. But for Krishna, his body and souls never perish. He is one and the same. Okay, that is the core idea of this verse. So we are all souls. and we exist forever. Anadi Nitya. So this is one of the axiomatic truths of Vedic philosophy, that Krishna starts his argument talking about soul's eternality first. And why does he do that? So here you could argue, well, perhaps what Arjuna is thinking is, who cares about the soul? I don't see the soul. I'm not able to see the soldier's soul. I'm not bothered about the soul. The bodies are dying, okay? And it is the bodies that are being killed in the war, so I am grieving. For that Arjuna's question, Krishna immediately comes with the 13th verse, which is again a very key philosophical idea. Dehino asmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tata dehantara praptihi dhiraha tatra na muhyati. So this particular verse can be viewed actually by giving a further explanation of the 11th verse, or a further explanation of the 12th verse. In the 11th verse, what did he say? Gatasun agatasunchta na anusochanti panditaha. For the wise who know the Shastras, do not grieve for those that are living or dead. Why is the question? Arjuna is asking, why is that the case? Krishna says, Dehino asmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tata dehantara praptihi dhirana mukhyati. So Dehinaha is an important verse. I just want to take these two words. Dehinaha. What is Dehinaha? Deha plus Inaha. In means owner or possessor. So Deha means this body. Dehin means that which is inside the body. So which is inside this material body and thinks that it owns it and possesses it. It's you and me. So we are called Dehins, not Paramatma. We are called Dehins. Okay. And what are we doing? We are in this Deha. And what is going on in our Deha? After fertilization, 9 months, we come out as babies, and then we are growing through and going through the samsara. What are we doing? Kaumaram, Yavvanam, Jara. So in our youth, in our adulthood, in our old age, what is happening? The soul is the soul is one. You and me, we are one. We are one soul is there, but the body is constantly changing. Yeah. So that is happening in this current life that we are in. So again, the Vedic philosophy is given very beautifully this verse where Krishna says, your body is changing all the time. Okay, and we have done this Ashwatha, right, in our chapter 15, Ashwathaha Sanatanaha. That Ashwatha etymology, one etymology, there were 10 different etymologies we looked at in that session. One is what? Ashwathaha, not tomorrow remaining. Our body today is not the same as the body tomorrow. The cells in our body are constantly changing. This body is constantly changing. Yet, you as a single unit or body of consciousness, you know that you are the same from childhood to youth to old age. Okay? Although your body is changing always, you're always aware of your existence as an experiencer of childhood, youth, and old age. So you are different from this body. That is the very first, another idea that Krishna is giving us. Then also what he is saying is, because your body is changing, you're dying all the time. If you are telling me that you are sorry because all these bodies are dying, then you should grieve for yourself continuously. You should be sitting in a corner and crying. Because you are dying every moment. Your body is changing every moment in your existence. And similarly, you will also accept another body in your next birth. So you are not doing that. So why are you grieving for something that is inevitable, that is going to happen? Your body is dying all the time. Okay? So this is another key idea of Vedic philosophy, again illustrating the soul is different from the body. And that the soul transmigrates. Yeah. Because in the 12th verse, Krishna has said, Nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayam ataha param. If the soul is immortal, then there is few questions. Is there souls apart from the body? He answers it here by using the word dehin. If so, what is their careers? He tells them they carry on going with transmigrations for a long time. Okay. So then the have a bit of a IT issue here. I'll just say, so the Bhishma, so the Arjuna thinks that he's clever. He says Bhishma and other souls may be eternal. When they die, they may acquire a new body. But my grief is not for their souls or their bodies. My grief arises from being deprived of their company, their association, their conversation. This bereavement agonizes me, Krishna. And this holds good. Though their souls may be immortal after that, and though the bodies are renewed. Whatever may be the case, they are dying. I cannot have their association. That makes me sad. Is this not a rational argument? From a Krishna's perspective, the answer is no. Okay? And this is what we also do. We get into Arjuna's shoes. For us, this sounds a very, very logical argument. But the Vedic philosophy tells us, you know the Sankhya and put it in practice, then you might be able to view life slightly differently. And what is that view that Krishna is giving here? Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukadakkadaha agama payino anityaha tam titikshasva bharata. This is an important verse. Again, one of the most important verses of the Gita. If we can understand, the rest of the Gita is only an expansion of this verse. And the way we should say this verse is kakuswara. Yeah, kakuswara means matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukadakkadaha. That is how you ask. Is that what it is? That is how you are supposed to say this verse, where tu is important. Tu there is alone. Is that alone? Is just the contact between the sense and the sense objects alone gives you happiness and misery, Arjuna? And when he asks that question, the answer is in it itself. He says no. So that is what Krishna is implying. No, it is not just the contact between the senses and the sense object is giving you the feeling of happiness or misery. It is the attachment that you have, the attachment of the abhimana that plays a major role in the happiness or distress. Okay, one man's cold may be another man's one. If you are in Chennai, cold is very happy. But if you are in Badrinath, heat is, you feel happy. Yeah. So if you are in England, currently cold is terrible. But if you are in Rajasthan, it's very, very good. So it's all very relative, number one. Number two, there are two simple examples. In your wakeful state, you may be lying on a bed. Your skin may be in contact with the bed. That skin contact can give you some comfort, and you can be a little bit happy when you are awake. Okay, in one way, and you can also feel the warmth and so on. But what will happen when you are in sushupti? When your mind and the senses have completely detached from the external senses, you do not feel that touch sensation of the bed, isn't it? Because you've got yourself detached from the contact. So that is a practical example to show that you don't feel happiness and distress when you're in sushupti. Many people who are in pain, they want to go into sleep, because in sleep they don't feel the pain because they're not in contact with the body, which means that do not have abhimana with their body. So this is a key idea, that it is that attachment. So Bhishma may be dead, but Bhishma's body that is dying is not giving you the grief. It is your attachment to Bhishma that is giving you the happiness or distress feeling. And in this situation, you're attached to that body, which is called Bhishma or Drona. And it is that attachment that is giving you the sadness. Okay, so now the next question is, you are asking me to give up attachment and then go and fight. This is silly. Yeah, so this is silly. Why? Why stay here and fight, and then to secure peace of mind, renounce all the likes and dislikes? So this sounds like a very round, very circular argument. You want
Sorry to interrupt, sir. What is attachment, sir? Then what exactly do you mean by attachment, sir?
Yeah, so can we pick it up in Q&A, Dayaji? Sorry to interrupt. So we'll certainly pick that up in Q&A. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay.
so
I did not know there was a Q&A. Sorry, sir.
So the question there is the attachment. Okay, let's do this very briefly. The attachment is mamakara and ahankara, mine and mine and I. That is the attachment there, and we'll pick it up in Q&A a little bit in detail. So Arjuna here is saying, so Arjuna's thinking is, why stay here and fight, and then to secure peace of mind, renounce all likes and dislikes? Why not I just run away, retire at once, and save my skin as well as mental peace? This is an interesting idea, because that is what most of us do, is escapism. Yeah, I know so many people who say, oh, I'm really stressed out in life. I can't handle my career. I can't handle my family, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to renounce and I'm going to become a saint. I'm going to wear ochre clothes and I'm going to shave my head and I'm going to have a long tail behind my head. And that's it. I'm going to find peace. That, in my view, is escapism. And that exactly is what Arjuna is trying to do here. Escapism. And what Krishna says is, if you practice that idea of detaching yourself, detached attachment, as Bandhanji talks about, if you practice that, it's not going to come easy, but if you practice that, you stand to gain some higher things in life, not only your peace of mind. So in mundane life, prevention may be better than cure. Prudence may be better, it could be the better part of valor. But pleasure and pain are inevitable, they come and go. If on every opportunity you put abandoning of abhimana into practice, it will not only give you immediate relief, but more importantly, says Krishna, so amrutatvaya kalpate. Such a detachment to abhimana will actually qualify you for moksha itself, Arjuna. So he's telling you, if you practice that, you will get higher things in life, let alone this mundane empire and so on. Okay, so so we are moving on, and I'm sorry I'm taking a little bit time, but these are such important verses here. So when Krishna has said this, then he reverts back and so on, reverts back and also gives us another idea about, in the following verses, he also talks about the eternals in Vedic philosophy. Okay, forget about some people who think there is only Brahman alone is eternal and everything else is transitory. Good luck to them. I'm not interested in that. I'm talking about proper Vedic philosophy as given to us in the Upanishads and by Veda Vyasa, where there are so many eternals that are discussed in Vedas. Additional eternals. What has Krishna done so far? He has given eternals taking sentient beings as examples. He said, look, just as me, I am eternal, you are eternal. But in the subsequent verses 16 and 17, and there are so many ways of looking at this verse, and I just want to use one way of looking at it to illustrate that now Krishna says, there are also other eternals, mate. There are also other eternals in existence. So anything that is eternal is imperishable. Similarly, you are eternal, therefore you are imperishable. Okay, so that is the logical argument that Krishna brings forth when he says, Nasato vidyate bhavo, na abhavo vidyate sataha. The sat and asat has got so many meanings, and I've just given one. Vyakta and avyakta. Asat means avyakta. Avyakta means unmanifest. Unmanifest is the Mula Prakriti, and we know from on all sorts of reasoning that the Mula Prakriti is eternal. It never disappears. In every creation, there is Mula Prakriti, transformation, Mula Prakriti, transformation. But the Mula Prakriti is always there. So that is one eternal that Krishna talks about. And then he talks about Avinashitu Tadviddi Yene Sarvam Idam Tatam. Anything that is all pervasive is eternal and imperishable. Okay, like me, I am everywhere, says Krishna. I am all pervasive and I am eternal. Similarly, there are some non-sentient eternals. Avyakrita Akasha, Varanas, Vedas are eternal. That is why we are called Sanatana Dharma, Sanadana Dharma. Yeah. Varanas, eternal sequence of Varanas is the Vedas, and they are eternal. Avyakrita Akasha is eternal. The Mula Prakriti is eternal. Jiva is eternal. Brahman is eternal, but Brahman is Nityo Nityanam. All others are dependent on him. So those are all the key Vedic ideas that Krishna brings forth in these 7 verses, and we could spend months contemplating on this, and that is what the philosophy of the rest of the Gita is. And I just want to finish with this. Ata para yaya tad aksharam adhigamyate, the one that we are doing, Mundaka Upanishad. And when this Paramatma is celebrated as Akshara, that is where this philosophy is. And we dwelt with this very briefly, but let me take to this. What is Akshara? Naksharati, imperishable, eternal. That which is eternal is Akshara. What are the various etymologies of Akshara? Primordial matter, Mula Prakriti, is called Akshara. And that Akshara's Abhimani is Lakshmi. Therefore, the Chetana Prakriti is also called Akshara. The one that is imperishable is the Varanas. So Varanas are Aksharas. Aksharas, letters, Varanas, they are imperishable. Okay. The whole of existence is in this Avyakrita Akasha. Even Bhuta Akasha is in Avyakrita Akasha. So that is also eternal, and that is also called Akshara. Aksharamam ambaranta dritehe. There is a sutra that talks about it. All the liberated souls, they never have destruction of their body because their body and them are the same. So they are called aksharas. And then there's all pervasive Vishnu, Akshnoti iti aksharaha. He is also called Akshara. So when we think about Akshara and we take the first 7 verses, starting from verse 11 to verse 17, the Samanvaya there is 100%. And Gita is the summary of the Upanishads. And on this occasion, when you take a Mundaka Upanishad, it fits in very, very well, talking about the eternalities of so many entities in Vedic philosophy. Okay. So now the question is, Krishna has said about all these eternal entities, and Jivas are eternal and Brahman is eternal. Now the question arises is, what is that relationship between the Jiva and Brahman, which is what Anandji is going to take to us next. Anandji, over to you.
Thank you, Madhuji. So we'll carry on with the theme of eternality. So we heard about all the eternal things, but the verses 18 to 30 focus on soul and the super soul, the soul and the God. So that's where the Brahman and Jiva relationship is very important. Before we proceed to 18 to 30 verses, as a backup and as a foundation knowledge, it's important that we discuss this concept of Bimba Pratibimba, or the mirror image concept. We already heard soul is eternal at the point of time. God is eternal of eternals. So the Bimba Pratibimba concept is the soul is perceived as a reflected image, Pratibimba. The soul's Swarupa Deha is the reflecting medium, and God is the object, Bimba. When we are discussing about this mirror image concept, we should be careful not to extrapolate this to the physics of optical images. The purpose of this concept here is to show the dependence of the soul on the God. Although eternality is similar, we heard that it is not exactly similar in proportion. There is an eternal relationship. You might question, is this relationship always there? What if the object does not exist? We can easily say that God always exists. He is omnipresent and is omniscient. We know all that. What about the reflecting medium? The reflecting medium is also eternal. And the image is also eternal. The whole concept of this God, soul, the medium, and the whole contact between them is eternal. The reason for this is to show the dependence of the soul on the God. This is the key to Sankhya philosophy. Also, it is important that the next few verses, 18 to 30, might portray both the soul as well as the God. So we have to be careful there how we interpret it. The third reason of getting to know this Bimba and Pratibimba purpose is, without knowing the soul in full, you cannot know the God. Self-realization leads to God realizations. So these are the basic underlying principles to understand this. The concept of Bimba Pratibimba, soul is the reflected image of the God. So with that, we move on to verse 18, where it says, Antabanta ime deha vityasyokta sharirina. What it means is gross body perishes. We have seen this in Madhuji's talks several times. It's a nice picture here, how it loses its gross body, whereas the soul, vityasyokta sharirina, soul does not perish. Souls are eternal and constant. Why? Because they are the mirror images of the Lord. Who is Lord? Anashino Aprameyas. Aprameyas means immeasurable. So who is immeasurable? The one who is omnipresent is immeasurable. So the souls are eternal and constant as they are the reflection of the omnipresent, indestructible, immeasurable Lord. When you know that, when you get to know the soul, when you get to know the God, hence fight for that divine pleasure, hence fight for God. Because God is eternal as in essence, eternal in body, ever free from sufferings, and absolute in perfection. He is infinite in time, space, attributes. And Madhuji just told about Nityo, Nityana, eternal of eternals. The next slide, please. So when we say the soul is eternal, we often hear about this kill and killed. So why do we hear that? So in this verse, Krishna explains, Ya enam vedyantaram yaschainam mannate hatam, meaning the one who thinks that is killed or one who is going to kill, both are ignorant, both have delusion. So what we see as being destroyed is the gross body and not the soul. Soul, I keep on saying this, soul being the reflected image has no independent action. Soul has no independence to kill someone or not be killed by someone. Soul has not even got the independence to take the birth because only God is independent. Soul is an instrument in the hands of God. So why are we discussing this verse here? Because we saw in chapter 1, Arjuna is lamenting that I'm going to be killing so many people. I'm going to kill Bhishma and Drona. Arjuna is not a free agent to kill Bhishma and Drona. The whole battle was in the hands of God. Krishna always said, remember this, Krishna always said fight, never use the term kill. So without Lord's will, nothing happens in the universe, irrespective of soul intending to do so. A coincidence here is, we know that there is a lot of Upanishadic teachings in Bhagavad Gita. This one really appealed to me because the 219 of Kathopanishad is the same as 219 of Bhagavad Gita. Interesting coincidence. Next slide, please. So soul being the reflection of the Lord, once again, has no birth, no death. Na jayate mriyate va kadachit. Ever. Nayam bhutva bhavita na bhuya. It never changes. Ajo nitya shashvatoyam purano, because Lord has no birth, no death, nor changes. Soul is the reflection of the Lord. Even when the body is killed, the embodied soul does not die. So as you saw in that picture earlier, that the body ages, but not the soul. The soul remains the same. When you know this part, why do you grieve? In the next verse, in the 21st verse, he repeats a little bit same, and he says, Veda avinashinam nityam, enam ajam avyayam, katam sapurusha partha, kam ghatayati hantikam. The swarupa of the soul being such in the sense, no birth, no death, never changes. Who can destroy such a soul? And how can such a soul be destroyed? Births and deaths happen due to the Lord's will, the universal force. Katam sa purusha partha, here it says, Purusha means the knower of the Brahman, one who is wise. How can he think that a soul can be destroyed, or who can destroy such a soul? Once again, we see a similar verse in Kathopanishad. Next slide, please. So if we think that the soul is birthless and deathless, how can you understand the births and deaths that happen in our regular life? So this verse, Vasam Sijirna, very famous verse, Vasam Sijirnani yata vihaya, Navani Gritnati Naroparani. Like we shed our old worn out clothes and wear the new clothes, similarly, the souls acquire a new body. Next click, please. So what does the birth means? Birth means appearance of the soul after acquiring a gross body. What does the death mean? Next click, please. Death means disappearance of the gross body or the old gross body. So the soul still exists between the appearance and the disappearance. This verse is related to the one we heard just now, the verse 213, wherein your body, right from the birth, from the youth, from the middle age and to the old age, the body changes. The soul remains the same. So acquiring and discarding this gross body is under the control of Lord. Soul has no choice at all. So the happiness is in accepting the reality and going along with it. Next slide, please. So we have discussed a lot about eternality of the soul. Intrinsically, the soul is indestructible. We saw that. What about the external forces? What about the extrinsic forces? Can the soul be destroyed by anything extrinsic? So this famous verse again, Nainam chindanti shastrani, Nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayantapo, na shoshayati marutaha. Very, very famous one. Of course, all of you know this. Weapons do not cut, fire does not burn, waters do not wet, wind does not dry. So in this verse, they have used the term chindanti, means the present tense, in the present. It's okay. The soul cannot be destroyed in the present tense. What about the future? Next verse reinforces this. Next slide, please. The next verse says, Achedoyam, Dahoyam, Akledoyam, Shoshevacha. Soul is never. It's altogether uncuttable, unburnable, unwettable, undryable. Why? Because it's nitya, it's always there. Because it is once again, it is a reflected image of the Lord. Sarvagatasthanu rachaloyam sanatana. Lord, the soul is an atom, always resting on the immutable Lord, omnipresent Lord. Sanatana, meaning who is known through the Vedas. Sarvagatastha anu, meaning the soul being an atom, atomic size on the Mahan, the Lord, the omnipresent Lord. And because of that, when the Lord himself is above all the four types of gross elements, soul is also incapable of suffering any harm from these causes and all the times. Soul being protected by the Lord need not fear death or the destruction. So I said the soul is resting on the Lord is looking on the soul, Lord is inside the soul. So if the soul is resting ever on the omnipresent Lord, why is the soul not aware of this shelter and refuge? The next sloka explains to Avyaktoyam, Achintoyam, Avikaryam, Uchate, Tasmadevam, Viditvainam, Nanushochitam Arhasi. Lord is resident in all the beings. We know that through the Madhuji's talks, we have gone through the cycle of the soul. Lord is inside, Lord is protecting us. The scriptures say we can't get to know him. We cannot be visualized by our sense organs, cannot be comprehended because he's immutable. When you know this that the Lord is protecting you, when you know this, Arjuna should not grieve or suffer, but focus on the duty as an offering to the Lord. Okay, in the worldly life, what this is all about philosophy and everything, but in our day-to-day life, we do not say that a body died. We do not say Drona's body died or Bhishma's body died. We neither say that although the body dies, the soul is still alive. We call such and such a person died. So which means the soul goes through the cycle of birth and death. How do we reconcile that? Is the name for the soul or for the body or for the both? So the next sloka answers that. So, atachainam nityajatam nityam va manyase vritam. Although soul is eternal, it has to undergo the cycle of birth and death. We discussed this before. By acquiring and discarding the body. That is inevitable. It has to happen. Death is certain for anyone born, and likewise, rebirth is certain for anyone who dies. These are the two sides of a coin. These two shlokas here, 26 and 27, are conveying all these meanings. And the Lord urges that this is the law of nature. This is inevitable. When you know the inevitability, grieving has no point at all. Yes, the loss of a physical body or the dear ones does cause grief, but one has to get used to these sort of inevitabilities rather than grieving too much about it. It does not mean we should not grieve. So we see a number of examples in our day-to-day life. Nobody grieves because it's night. Nobody grieves because it's winter. Nobody gets overjoyed because it's the day. In our day-to-day life, we see profits, losses. Nobody overgrieves or nobody gets affected. They are inevitable. Take the big example of cricketing. If India lost, none of those players are going to grieve for a very long time. They have to get up and get used to playing cricket again. So the happiness and the sadness, these dualities of life are always there, inevitable. And Arjuna's attitude or mentality should be such. Next slide, please. So carrying on this concept of understanding the soul in our day-to-day life, this next verse is about avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata vyakta nidhananyeva tatra ka paridevana. So I said the soul, when we say birth, the soul acquires the gross body. This gross body is acquired from the inert material nature. And when there is death, the gross body goes and merges back in the inert material nature. So what we see the soul is only when it has a gross body. We have no idea who that soul was before the birth. Next click, please. We only get to know that soul when it takes birth, when it acquires a gross body. We do not know who that will be once they get rid of the gross body. It means after the death. So what we see a body is in the transit area between the birth and the death. We have no clue about what this soul was previously, what this soul will be in the future. It's like a transit area. We are living in a transit area. The verse asks, if that is the case, why lament for such a short attachment with the body? Tatra ka paridevana. So paridevana has got two meanings. One is lament. It can also mean marvel. So this journey of the soul, next click please. So this journey of the soul is a marvel. So very few are aware of this. Think of the God who is behind all this marvel. Next slide, please. So this verse again, verse 29, God as marvel of marvels, the beautiful one, Ascharyavat paschati kaschidena, Ascharyavat vadati tathaiva chanyaha, Ascharyavat chainam anyashrunoti, Shrunvapena vedana chaiva kaschina. So what it means, some see soul as a marvel, soul. Some talk about the soul as a marvel. Some hear soul as a marvel. Having heard all that, yet no one knows. We know from Kathopanishad, the famous verse, Na tatra chakshur gachati, na vag gachati, no mana. We can't see him, we can't explain about him, even the mind can't comprehend him. So this is, we are talking about the soul, and the one who realized the soul as a marvel is very, very rare. 1 in a million. They look upon the soul as a tiny, imperfect atom dependent on infinite God. So when they know the soul, that is self-realization. When you have a self-realization, and the ones who have realized the soul as a marvel, they will visualize the God as marvel of marvels. This is very, very rare indeed, and this is God realization. So not only in general there is an ignorance about God, but there is also similar ignorance of soul. So for us, if we have a self-realization, a true knowledge of the soul implies a true attitude and devotion to God and leads to self-surrender and absolute trust in Him. Next one, please. So after these verses, in the verse 30, Lord Krishna is concluding his sermon on Sankhya. reiterating the fact that Dehi Nityam Avadhyoyam Dehe Sarvasya Bharata Tasmat Sarvani Bhutani Natvam Shochitumarhasi. He says, so summarize it. Souls are immortal, bodies must necessarily die. Soul is ever a dependent being. God alone is supreme. So it's saying that when Lord is resident in the soul, in the body, it's not appropriate to think about birth and death, as the Lord himself guards the soul. Whether the soul is in the gross body or the subtle body, God is always there. Then why grieve for it? Next slide, please. So far, that brings us to the end of Sankhya, wherein all the emotional problems of Arjuna have been addressed. Yet the moral problems are still there. How is Krishna going to assess the moral problems about the war? What are the moral problems? Arjuna thought to destroy the entire race of Kurus or to kill the teachers, elders, and other kith and kin for the sake of kingdom is adharma. On the contrast, Arjuna thought fleeing away from the battlefield, he will be avoiding the death of such a large number of people, and he will sacrifice his personal interest. He thought that was dharma. Krishna responds now in verses 31 to 38, insisting that waging war is indeed Arjuna's dharma. And here I pass on to Neeta Kulkarni. Neetaji, over to you.
Yeah, so what we had decided is, in interest of time, because it's already 1.5 hours. So as Sananji was speaking, we've made a decision within that group as to, we will take this on from in the next session. So we'll have chapter 2 as 3 parts. So we'll start with this session and the next one. And also this will give us time for Q&A. And I know that there was already one question from Dayaji. He was asking about attachment. So
Yes,
the question is for Madhusudanji from your session, from your part. So please go ahead. And before, just one more thing I wanted to say is there's a summary slide from Anandji, slide 45. Madhuji, if you can just put that up, and then we can do that. Or after Q&A, we can do that, whichever way you prefer.
I think I'll go with that slide. Probably that will solve some of the questions.
Some of the questions. Okay, yes. So thank you, Anand.
So having spoken about Sankhya, I'm sure most of you, or maybe some of you, are feeling a bit uneasy about Gita's position. There's lots of anxieties, some strange thoughts. What this about soul, body, death, detachment, fighting against teachers, fighting against kith and kin. Is this all? How do we reconcile all these confusions in our mind? What is the essence of knowing about all this? So there are a few questions I have put. When you think that soul is eternal, body dies, does that mean it's okay to go ahead and kill someone? No. When we are discussing about all this, this has to be discussed within the context of a wider context as a whole. This is totally a different situation. This is a war situation. This is Dharma Yuddha. What we have learned from the Sankhya is for the soul to elevate towards the God. We should not misuse such a knowledge, because we are still in a society. We are still bound by the societal dharma, kula dharma. So we should not use that for other purposes. This is contextual. It has to be understood in terms of what is going on now. It's the Dharma Yuddha. What is the attitude? What is the mentality of Arjuna? And how we as souls take this knowledge and look at God as a supreme authority. People die in dharmic war. It's not a crime. It's a duty. It's a duty, dharma or dharma, to fight. Next question, please. So should we not grieve for the death of dear ones? Yes, you can grieve. But The death of a dear person need not cause any grief, come in the way of discharging one's duty. If you are performing the duty, which probably Neetaji will allude to a lot more later, maybe in the next session, this grief should not come in the way of discharging your duty. Next one, please. Is it really practical to have no attachment to the body? No, it is not. It is very practical to have attachment to the body. So what is it we have learned about all this? Again, it's contextual. During discharging a duty, the attachments to have to be weakened because you have to come over the emotions. The attachment, somebody was asking a question of attachments. Emotions have to be overcome, the pain, the grief, me, mine, because these emotions will sway you over your sense of duty. Over attachment can also be a weakness leading to adverse effects. Next questions, please. The last one, I think I'll probably end on this. So can you wage a war against kith and kin or teachers? Gita says, if evil men and evil forces constitute teachers, elders, and one's kith and kin, that should not detract and even from this dharma of destroying the evil. To yield to such emotional pressures is emotionalism. It's adharma. Relations should not come in the way of discharging one's duty. So these are only few questions which I have put in for this sessions. We will be glad if you can put some of your questions in the chat box. And hopefully in the coming sessions, we should be able to try and address it. Back to you, Madhuji.
Yeah, thank you, Anandji. Yeah, go ahead, Madhuji.
No,
That-
Neetaji, go for it. I was just looking at some Q&A stuff. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Yeah.
There's one question I've said here talking about all this can start with an understanding that Mahabharata really happened, also that there is God. Okay, and then where is the proof that there is God? So thank you for that question, Dayaji. So we always start our Gita Chintan. I think you may be new to this group. So this is our second round of Gita Chintana, and in the second round we started off with an introduction to Mahabharata before doing chapter 1. So the question around did Mahabharata really happen, etc., has been dealt with in that introduction. So it is there in the YouTube channel. So may I invite you to kind of look at that, so you will get your answer. As you know, Mahabharata is itihasa. So these things really happened. So from a philosophy of the Veda, we have all accepted that Mahabharata is itihasa, and itihasa is one of the 7 primary scriptures of Vedic philosophy. So that is where we get all the scripture, our philosophy there. Where is the proof that there is God? Okay, I can't show you with my eyes and hands, but please go and refer to the Vedas. And Vedas is the pramana to know about the God. So again, there are quite a number of series that we have done on what are the means of knowledge and what is the purpose of the Vedas and so on. So revelatory scriptures is the only proof that tells us about God. And then you have to experience and find it out for yourself. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question. Anything else? Okay, so...
I think he had also asked a question on attachment when you were discussing.
Sure, yeah, attachment is, I think the answer there is Isha Upanishad mantra, but Isha Vasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagatatena tyaktena bunjitaha magrudaha kasyasviddanam. So when we understand that everything belongs to Paramatma and we are just here for a very brief innings, then our we don't own anything. So when we don't own anything or we don't actually control anything, the philosophy there where Swayambhu Manu is asking Yajna, is when he's praising Yajnanamaka Paramatma, he's saying everything belongs to the Lord, everything is owned by the Lord. When that is the case, what kind of attachment am I going to be having at something that I actually do not own? So that is from a very philosophical perspective, but the essential reason, of course, is the Abhimana is the root cause of samsara. Abhimana is, we think, Mamakara and Ahankara essentially is Abhimana. Mamakara, mine, all this property is mine, this car and everything else is mine, my children, I have bought these children here, etc. So mine, and I have done this, I have done that, and so on. So those Mamakara and Ahankara really is the Abhimana. And Krishna in so many upcoming verses in the chapter says, shed that Mamakara and Ahankara. That is the only route to your Karma Yoga. And And again, that is what we are going to be doing in chapter 3, and Neetaji is also going to be dealing with that. So I hope that answers your question. It's that
Yes, sir.
Amakara and Ahankara is getting rid of one's Abhimana, and it's easier said than done. So the practical aspect of this is entirely different. That is why Krishna said, Abhyasena tu kaunteya. So we have to practice, otherwise it's not. So that's what he said. Thank you, Daya, for those excellent, great questions. Thank you and welcome to the group.
Yes, sir. And another question. Apart from grieving that they are dying, Arjuna is grieving that they are dying, both Bhishma and Dronacharya. Bhishma, Arjuna, and the Pandavas, they are fatherless children. So more than a teacher and everything and all, Arjuna and the Pandavas have they see him as a fatherly figure. They see Bhishma as a fatherly figure. And Dronacharya, he sacrificed another disciple, Ekalavya's thumb for Arjuna's sake, he did not want to give up Arjuna in front of Ekalavya. So he has that amount of, it is, when you look at the bottom level, it is just pure gratefulness. It is gratitude. So here, apart from grievance, gratitude also clouds his duties, no sir. So it is gratitude is also part of dharma or karma, sir. Gratitude, dharma, and karma, sir. All these are clouding my mind, sir. So
Yeah.
where does gratitude come here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I don't know, Suresh or Anand, do you want to pick on this question from Daya?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Anand. Go ahead.
These are emotions. Yes, there is. I answered it. Yes, it's perfectly all right to grieve. Okay, it's perfectly all right to grieve, and yes, gratitude is important. Relations are important, but look at the context. The same people to whom you are showing the gratitude are standing in the way of justice. You have to take a different stand, and that's what God himself is advising Arjuna. I hope that answers your questions.
Yes. Yes. So you're saying you're inferring that gratitude also comes under emotion.
Gratitude comes under emotions. It's all attachments. Probably in the next session, the attachment itself that has been discussed. There are 4 types of attachments. Abhimana. Maybe we can touch briefly upon that next time. Maybe that will make it more clear.
But forgetting gratitude is also not dharma, no sir. It is adharma, no sir. Forgetting gratitude is adharma, no sir.
Yeah. So Daya, if you could just give you a good answer, anything that goes against God, whether it is gratitude or otherwise, is wrong. Period. Yeah. So here are these folks who are sitting there with their own ignorance that is clouded upon them. They are standing against the Supreme Lord. Yeah. So gratitude or whatever becomes secondary there, and your primary position there is, if it is against the Lord, what is that gratitude worth a penny? It is not worth anything, because here these are all Atatayinas, the Kauravas are Atatayinas, and these guys are there because they're indebted to the Kurus because of the food that they have eaten and so on. So I think it has to be seen in context with regards to what is going on here, rather than picking, oh, Bhishma was a great guy and Arjuna was also a great guy, and how can Arjuna? Yeah. So Bhishma, for example, he himself is an exalted soul that actually comes down along with when Krishna descends, he brings all his family along, and Bhishma is no ordinary person, we know from Mahabharata. So are all the characters. So this is some kind of a divine action that is at play here to not only this happened, but through that what happened, we can imbibe the moral values that we can imbibe in our lives, so that we can have a spiritually enriched life towards Shreyas and reach our own, whatever our gati is. So I think gratitude, as you say, can be a good thing, but in what context? Yeah. So Bhishma was very grateful to Duryodhana because he gave him food and gave him money, and Bhishma was very indebted to him. Is that a gratitude worth anybody's salt? Absolutely not.
Okay.
So
Okay.
gratitude
Okay.
is a very relative concept. Yeah. So Suresh, do you want to come?
No, Madhuji, you covered it. I mean, I was just saying that exactly what you're saying, that gratitude in context. And that's what even Arjuna actually says, that they're still attached. They're people with attachment, with desire still. And the only yardstick to measure is are you fighting for dharma or are you against dharma? And there's no further, there's no middle ground there. Either you're for it or you're against it, irrespective of what the causes may be. So I was just, I mean, you explained it very well. Thank you.
Suresh, yes. Neetaji.
No, I was also going to say the same thing as Suresh was saying is, yes, which is the worst one of the which is the worst papa that you're going to commit. So that is what we have to be. So dharma and adharma. So dharma wins. So yes, I'll cover a little bit of this in the next session.
I suppose ultimate gratitude should be to God rather than to any mortals.
Yeah, and as you said,
Okay,
Dharma,
sir.
in Vishnu Sahasranama, Dharma is the name of Vishnu himself. So this Dharma is for Vishnu. And if it is against him, that's done. Yeah. Anyway, Devalji has got a question. Devalji.
No, it's just interesting. I mean, if it's being presented as if the two sides are dichotomous rather than black and white, rather than shades of gray over here. And why are we? I mean, so are we then saying Bhishma and Dronacharya are adharmic? Because they are fighting for, for the sides of Kaurava. So I'm just, I know it's a bit late, just throwing it out there.
So,
Maybe we could take it up next time if that's okay. Anyway, it will get covered as the duty of a Kshatriya.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Neetaji, maybe interest of time, they will, if that's okay, we could pick it up next time.
yeah,
Yeah,
we could do that. Yeah, quick answer would be like, they may not be adharma, but if they are fighting on adharma side, that itself is wrong. So anyone who is associated with adharma, that also is wrong. So if you add a few drops of poison in a big pot of milk, the whole milk is spoiled. So you're not going to drink that milk. So that's just a very simple example. But yeah, we'll cover it.
No, but if you are an exalted being and you're a super exalted being, where is that coming from? Anyway, we can.
So yeah, sure, Devalji. Yeah, so that is why even Mahabharata should be read with Tatparya Nirnayas on that Acharyas have actually done this to solve exactly the questions that you're asking. These guys are great. Why are they doing nasty things? So there is this work called Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya, certainly from Acharya, that we use as the core text to understand these kind of fault lines that seem to appear in the storyline, but actually they are not fault lines, they're actually reasons for that. So maybe we can pick it up. So Bhishma, for example, is a Dyunamaka. He's one of the Vasus, yeah, and he comes down when Krishna comes down. And why does he come down? Why does he do all this? And there are all these various explanations that Acharya give us. So maybe we pick that up at some point. So on that note, yeah, shall we get Sushrut to recite Om and we close today's session? So fantastic, everyone. Thank you very much for sticking with us. Sorry, we ran a little bit late. So Anandji, do you want to just close telling us how things
No
are
problem,
going
sir.
to be next
No
time?
problem.
So once again, thank you very much. And once again, apologies that we exceeded the time limit. But like I said,
No problem, sir.
this
We'll
chapter
be
is
ready to.
such an important chapter. And thank you all for putting up with this. And hopefully we will make it, we'll try and cover as much as in the next 1 or 2 sessions. With that note, thank you very much. Hari Om Krishna Namaha.
So,
Thank you.
Anandji, just to add, next session is on the 17th December, right?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hare
Yes.
Krishna, everyone. And also don't forget Gita Jayanti is upon us. So we have to make an event out of it. So we will work in the background and we'll come back to the rest of the group. Okay, Hare Krishna. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Bye.